Good evening, and it's good to see so many of you here. Welcome to the second of what might be three possible town hall meetings to discuss the upcoming referendum. And just to stress something, this is a binding referendum, meaning that if it passes, the city is compelled to change to the city manager form. I've had some people say, well, it's advisory. It's not advisory. It's a binding referendum, so please understand that. This is a meeting of the Plan Commission and therefore must follow the Plan Commission protocol. Meeting will now come to order. Please call the roll.
Ken Pisa,
Here.
Amy Arthur, Jim Kleiner,
Here.
Lisa Carrico,
Here.
Rich Greening,
Here.
Bob Menti,
Here.
Dave Peters,
Here.
Angie Partridge, here. Kyle Vidigar,
Here.
Karen Watson, here.
We have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Again, welcome, and we thank the Elks for making the hall available, and also thank City Clerk's Office and the Park and Recs Department for all the arrangements tonight. And in particular, I'd like to say thank you to Kyle for filling in for me at the last meeting. So thank you, Kyle. Did a great job. Several comments on the conduct of the meeting before we start. The meeting is being recorded. All and any comments must be non-personal, civil, and in good taste. Anything out of line, judged by the chair, will be addressed, and if needed, that person may be asked to leave. We're going to try to hold the meeting to 2 hours. After the introductory remarks, there'll be a presentation on the pros and cons of the issue. The floor will then be open for questions from the Plan Commission and then by the general public. If we don't get all the questions answered tonight, we may have another third meeting. We'll make that decision after this meeting is over. We're going to ask you to keep an open mind. You can disagree with another's position, but everyone is entitled to his or her opinion, and that doesn't make anyone right or anyone wrong. Just that they have different viewpoints, and that has to be respected. So please be respectful. The issue in question is on the ballot. Shall Oglesby adopt a city manager form of government? Again, I repeat, since some people think this is advisory, it is not. Just a quick recap. In a little over a month, Oglesby voters will be asked if they want to adopt a city council manager form of government. The petition that was filed has met all the legal requirements and will be on the ballot on April 1st. The last forum, a presentation was made by IMCA, that's the International City Managers Association, on the pros and cons of the commissioner form versus city manager form. Some people felt that the presentation leaned heavily towards the city manager form, and others felt that it was really unbiased and very objective. Again, depending upon which side of the issue you're on, you're entitled to your opinion. IMCA is an advocate for the city manager form of government, and one of the presenters, of course, was a former city manager of Streator and Decatur. In checking, I could find no technical or professional association like IMCA that advocates specifically for the commission form. And since it is illegal under the Prohibited Political Activities Act for the Plan Commission or its members to hire someone specifically to support or to defeat a referendum, hiring a firm to present the pros and cons did not make any sense. It would be illegal. We did, however, find an attorney who would present the pros and cons of a change and not charge a fee. We'll hear from him shortly. I have just a few facts to present. As I look across the valley, we have several different forms of government, starting at Princeton, Peru, Utica, and Ottawa. Each has a different form of government. Now granted, 3 of them are larger than Oglesby and 1 is smaller. We have the strong mayor form of government in Peru. We have the city manager form of government in Princeton and the commission form of government in Ottawa. And it seems like the form of government doesn't make any difference if the city is going to succeed in what they're doing. It's really the people that are elected that make the difference. And as long as they all push in the same direction, then the city will succeed. So the form of government doesn't seem to make a lot of difference. Now, as a chair, I have to stay neutral and ensure that we stay on track. There is ample opportunity for anybody to listen to all the facts. I checked with Ottawa to see why they did not go to a city manager form of government. They gave me 4 reasons that they retained their commission form of government. Granted, Ottawa is larger than Oglesby. They're about 19,000 people, and they have a budget of about $60 million. They felt that Ottawa was not large enough to attract a city manager who would be in it for the long haul. Anyone interested would probably be using Ottawa as a stepping stone to move up in his or her career, moving on to a bigger municipalities. And that was evident when the speaker last week went from Streeter to Decatur. Yeah, we'd either have somebody going up in their career looking at Ottawa as a stepping stone, or coming down in their career heading towards retirement. In either case, they would not be in it for the long haul at Ottawa. Second, that the money that they have to pay for a city manager, they could hire probably 1 or 2 more employees and invest more money in economic development. Third, having a local person as head of the departments gave the community somebody local that they knew to contact with a question or a problem, and accountability. Now, I know that was addressed at the last meeting in great detail. Fourth, instead of relying on a city manager, they opted to rely more heavily on the community's advisory staffs, the city attorney, the city engineer, the economic development director, and city advisory commission and committee to help with all the decision making. People who had a vested interest in Ottawa. And that's the reason they chose to retain the commission form of government and not move towards any other form. That being said, let's get on to our speaker. We're very fortunate tonight to have Carl Ottoson join us. Carl is from Naperville, and he got his doctorate degree in 1984 from University of Illinois College of Law. Carl played a leading role in the founding of the firm of Ottoson, DiNolfo, Hasselberg, and Castaldo Limited in 1992. His vision was to build a law firm dedicated to serving those who serve others, municipalities, school districts, and public safety organizations. Under Mr. Ottoson's guidance as president and managing partner, Ottoson DiNolfo is recognized as a leading law firm in Illinois for municipal, school, and public safety law. Nearly 400 community or governmental entities throughout the state rely on the firm for legal guidance tailored to their needs, reflecting a full-service practice that has the breadth and scope to develop comprehensive solutions. Mr. Ottoson has 40 years of experience representing governmental bodies, private corporations, and individuals in a variety of legal issues. Mr. Ottoson frequently negotiates contracts with unions representing bargaining units in law enforcement, fire protection, education, public works, and other public services, as well as with the private sector. In addition to his work with contract matters, Mr. Ottoson represents the employers in grievance and interest arbitrations and advises on discipline investigations. He provides proactive problem avoidance, counseling through supervisor training programs, and a drafting of effective personnel policies. Please welcome Carl Otteson.
Thank you. I think the 2 hours are up just listening to that introduction. For the last couple of years or so, I've been doing behind the scenes work here for the city as labor counsel. And when this was being discussed, I said, well, our firm represents all sorts of governmental entities. I'll have no problem just coming out and doing kind of a pros and cons, answering any questions you might have. I don't have any skin in the game. I don't care what the citizens vote for here. It's your community. It's not mine. I once had a village board member turn to me in a meeting when I was village attorney. He said, how should I vote on this, Carl? I'm like, first of all, I don't live here. I wasn't elected to represent the entities. You know, this is your town. Vote what you want. I'll always give my personal opinion if asked. But that's not the role of an attorney sitting with a governmental entity of whatever variety. I almost never do this, but I've got my phone on because I do have a Waukegan Public Library Board meeting that starts at 6:30, and they may call with a question. Hopefully they will not. It was better that they call me rather than an associate who doesn't know anything about what's going on there. So I apologize in advance if my phone rings. I'll only answer it if it is the executive director at Waukegan. There are just under 1,300 municipalities in the state of Illinois. Maybe 50 of them have the commission form of government. So the form that you have here in Oglesby is not a real popular one. It used to be used a lot more often, but as towns grew, they kind of outgrew that. And so that is, you know, one thing that you'll find out is you're kind of unique, not totally unique, but Oglesby with only 4 councilmen and the mayor, that's a small body of people, but you have a small community. And that number 5 is one of my favorite numbers for units of government to have on a board. And under the Open Meetings Act, 2 of them can talk without it violating the open meetings. A 3-member board, you can't even talk about having a meeting, essentially, without violating the act. So your 5-member board, it takes 3 affirmative votes for any action to be approved. You can't have 3 people show up, 2 vote in favor of something, and it passes. You have to have 3 affirmative votes. So that's a little bit different, but that's a protection under the Open Meetings Act. When you only have a 5-member board, 2 people can talk, they can call a meeting, but 2 of them, if only 1 other person shows up and you have a quorum, can't do what they talked about doing unless that 3rd person goes along with it. So it's cumbersome to get too big of a group together. Most city councils have 8 alderpersons now, and the mayor. And if you were to switch, you would continue with that 5-person city council. They're all elected at large, correct?
Correct.
You would continue to do that. You would have 4 alderpersons and a mayor. Unless the board by ordinance or the council by ordinance elected to go to a 6-member plus a mayor. By referendum, you could go back and do by wards representation. I wouldn't recommend it since that's not on the ballot, but that's one thing that I would not recommend. The at-large approach, from my personal opinion, is everyone that's on that board, the city council, is looking out for the whole, not just one area. In a small community, I really don't think it works well to have a ward representation where the individuals care more for a part of the community than the whole. So we have villages, cities, towns in that almost 1,300 municipal organizations in the state. Vast majority of our cities are villages. So here with the city form of government, you can have a professional administrator by ordinance, or you can have a managerial form of government by referendum. It's my understanding that the ICMA presentation, the individual stated that about 50% of the communities were manager form. Probably about 50% of the municipalities have either an administrator or a manager, but the vast majority of them are by ordinance and not the managerial form of government that we're dealing with by referendum here. And there is a huge difference. It's up to you whether you think the cost of having a professional administrator between the city council, the department heads, the employees is in the best interest of your community. It's up to you whether you believe that cost is worth it. But the differences are key. In the commission form of government, you have individual commissioners overseeing particular areas or departments of the city government. In the managerial form of government, the manager oversees everything. He's essentially the executive of the community more so than the mayor. Appoints all of the department heads and appointed offices of the city and can remove them. Has the overall authority to enforce the laws and the policies that the council sets. So a lot of the power that you would see now that is either in the mayor or in the individual commissioners will be in the hands of that individual manager. Does not get to vote, but can participate in the discussions at all the meetings. But you need to really think about if I were the mayor in a city government, I would typically have the power to appoint, with the confirmation of the city council, the village attorney, the village engineer, department heads, police chief, fire chief. That all goes out, and that is now the manager's authority. The manager doesn't necessarily report to the mayor. He's not hired by the mayor, not appointed by the mayor. The manager is appointed by the city council. So 3 members of the city council can hire whoever they want for that position, and that individual is then beholden to those 3 votes. And what's the difference between policy and administration on a 5-member board? 3 votes. Because they can direct their manager to do what they wish with just 3 votes. And if they don't like it, if the manager doesn't want to do what they want, then they can remove them. So that authority is certainly there. It's the city council's authority to select the manager, but the manager has the day-to-day authority over all the departments and the appointing and removal of all the department heads and the officers is one of the biggest things. What level of spending authority does a manager have? None, unless the board, the city council gets it. By ordinance, by policy adoption, can say, okay, the manager can approve all contracts without council approval of up to X dollars. I know some that are $25,000, others are $5,000. It would be up to the city council to determine what level of authority they would give to the manager to approve entering into contracts on behalf of the city. That level, the dollar amount threshold can change as the city council decides, up or down. And I've seen it happen both ways. And whether it's a city manager form of government or a city with a manager or administrator, that purchasing policy is developed by the council, and the authority then is delegated to whatever extent the council believes appropriate. So it's still the council's authority to approve the expenditures unless they give by ordinance authority to the manager to do it on his or her own. The commission form and the manager form are incompatible. Because in the commission form, the individual commissioners have authority over the department, right? That is incompatible with the manager that has by statute the authority over that individual in that department. So what happens if this were to pass and you have a manager, it is then the manager in charge of the departments, not the city council. And so you would change from commissioners having that authority to having essentially alderpersons and the mayor working with the professional manager to run the community. The referendum, if passed, there's also a process if you decide down the road that didn't work out so well, we really don't want to do that anymore. You have to wait 4 years before you can have a referendum to abandon the managerial form of government. And that 4 years starts from the date that you hire your manager. That might take a while. Okay, so it's not 4 years from the date that the election takes place and the results are certified. It's 4 years from the date that you actually hire a manager. Then there could be a referendum to abandon it and go back to commission or select some other form if that's what this community wanted to do. Under section 514D of the Illinois Municipal Code, a majority vote in favor of the referendum, they have the effective date on when you are formally a managerial government would be on the next municipal election. So that would be in 2027. However, the council may immediately or as soon thereafter as they wish implement it by adopting the ordinance, reorganizing the city government, addressing the manager, what authority the manager has, and there's all sorts of things you need to modify within your current city code to incorporate the managerial form and take out the commission form as far as authority, who does what. And one of the things I would recommend is you address the purchasing authority of that manager. So the city council may adopt an ordinance reorganizing, but would not have to until after the next election in 2027, at which time then at the first meeting, the council is supposed to do all the reorganization ordinance. I would hope that if this passes, that before that first meeting after the April 2027 election, an ordinance is done and you've done the work ahead of time to have that ready to go. So it would be up to the council to determine whether to go ahead and implement it before 2027. But by statute, it's effective at the next election, unless by ordinance, the city council determines to go ahead and hire a manager. As I said earlier, the date of hiring a manager is the date that the 4 years kicks in for when you could do a referendum to say, never mind, that wasn't the greatest of ideas we ever had. And it would take another referendum to revert from the managerial form of government, and if that passed, then you would change back. In 2027 elections, you would have two alderpersons that received the fewest votes. Okay, the four that get the votes, the highest numbers, would be elected. The two of those four that had the lowest votes would get 2-year terms. The other two would get 4-year terms, and the mayor would get a 4-year term. Thereafter, then you would have staggered 2 alderpersons, and then 2 alderpersons and the mayor getting elected in different cycles. All would have 4-year terms after that first group had two. Two of them would have 2-year terms, and then would go to 4 years for everybody. So you didn't get staggering of your elections. Another major difference is the authority of the mayor to veto resolutions, ordinances, any expenditures that the council does now. The mayor has the ability to veto anything that creates a liability. Under the managerial form, where your alderpersons are elected at large, the mayor will not have the authority to do the veto. So it's a little bit different authority. The mayor is restricted under the managerial form of government with respect to that. I don't know why. If you read through the municipal code, it makes no sense in a lot of this area. Why would a mayor in a city that has a managerial form of government, that has alderpersons elected by ward, get the ability to veto, but if they're elected at large like you would have here, the mayor would not have that authority? That doesn't make sense to me, but that's what the current statute is. And that's 5-3-1 of the municipal code for those who care. Unless there's a contract that provides otherwise, the manager is appointed for an indefinite term. You can enter into a contract with the manager, but it should not exceed the term of the mayor. That's all I have. I don't want to come across as, in favor of one or the other. The commission form of government is a little funky by itself. The managerial form of government is a little funky as well. Welcome to Illinois.
Thanks very much, Carl. At this point, we'll entertain questions from the Plan Commission. So if you have a question, please step up to the podium and let's ask a question if you got it. Identify yourself. Sure. Hold on.
Not the board.
Okay, we're good.
I'm Dave Peters. In the last meeting, it was suggested that the city manager position could potentially save money for a community, even more so than obviously the cost to hire the city manager. Do you foresee that? Have you come across that a city manager saves costs to anybody?
Well, I would look at what's your highest paid department head. Most likely your manager is going to be paid more than that, plus benefits. So you want to look at that total package. Are there ways to save money in government? Right now, we're hearing all sorts of things about the federal government saving all sorts of money, billions and trillions of dollars. Will you be able to save money by having a professional administrator? I think you run on a pretty tight budget. I don't know how you would be able to save that amount of money. If there's that much waste going on and you're so that inefficient with your current form of government, maybe you should change. But I don't know your finances, so I can't even really give you a clue as to whether I even think there's some areas that you really should save. Your council members will probably be able to tell you better than I can. Department heads.
Let me just, Carl, our current budget is around $13 million. Okay, and of that $13 million, about $5 million is for the purchase of electricity, because we have our own electrical distribution system. So it's roughly about $8 million of other than electrical that's not part of our budget. At the last meeting, they talked about a city manager costing somewhere between $120,000 and $150,000 salary. So that would have to be taken into account.
I do a lot of collective bargaining, and I used to say anywhere from 1.25 to 1.33 is the factor that I used for benefits and salary. So if you're $100,000 salary, plan on 133,000. At this point, it's about 1.4 to 1.5 with the cost of health insurance, pension funds. This position would be an IMRF position as Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. So there is a pension obligation that goes along with it. That usually is around a 16 to 18% of the employer's contribution is 16 to 18% of salary, and the employee puts in 4.5%. There's also then the regular Social Security, Medicare side that the employer has to contribute. There often are other benefits that are negotiated, and so you have to deal with all that package. So if it's 120,000, add another 50 to 60,000 on top of that, and maybe that professional can come in and find a lot of ways to save money and make it worthwhile. Don't know.
Another question?
Rich Greeting. My question would be, if the manager has that much power, why do we even need commissioners anymore, I guess? Is it just to break a tie and a vote, or why do we even need commissioners?
The council would still adopt ordinances and policies and set the direction and goals for the manager to accomplish. And the manager would be working with the council to determine what are we going to do, how are we going to spend the money, and what are our priorities. So you still have the policy body, the city council making the policy, and it's the manager's authority to implement that policy.
So if we did go to this form of government, like how much are we, I know everybody's talking about how much they're gonna get paid, but how much would it cost the city to change like all the ordinances or whatever to be able to do this? Are you talking like a lot of lawyers' fees and such, or?
There would be a significant need to rewrite a lot of the city code. I don't know how many hours that would take.
Probably quite a few.
Just quite a few. but,
Quite a few. Okay.
If it's 100 hours at $200 an hour, that's easy to figure out math. I like to keep things rounded off. So I don't know what the city attorney charges per hour. I think we are charging the city for the labor work $245 an hour, $250 in there somewhere. I should know that, but sorry, I don't.
So it would be significant.
Rich, I'd like to address that.
Okay.
I've been involved with the city politics now since 1971, and most of you weren't even born yet. But I was on the council for 12 years and 50 years on the Plan Commission. And during that period of time, we've gone through 3 codifications, and they are very intensive and require a lot of work. The Land Development Code, for instance, requires that any text modification go to the Plan Commission before that can be adopted in the ordinance. So the Plan Commission would have to be involved in text amendments as well as recodification, but it's a big job. Who's next?
So you turn it off. So you mentioned there would be a way to roll it back by referendum. How often have you seen that happen? I mean, it can happen, but how often have you seen
I
it?
have no knowledge of one that has done so.
Okay.
Okay. I know that the city or the Village of Orland Park sought to have that happen last election, and it did not pass. The city of Waukegan proposed to go to the manager form of government last election, and that did not happen.
Okay.
So one tried to eliminate it, one tried to change it to that from their city council form without an administrator. Well, they have somewhat of an administrator in Waukegan, but they've had basically the mayor running the things for years and years. So it's a little different.
Yeah.
I don't know of one that has rescinded it, though.
So with my second question, it's just kind of change of direction. So I've been attending Oglesby City Council meetings for 33 years, and you mentioned that the mayor has veto power. Is that really in the commission form of government, or is that in the strong mayor form of government? Because Oglesby, they've never had a veto happen in the 33 years I've been.
Doesn't have,
It's in cities, it's in villages, it's in the strong mayor form of government. It's also, I believe, in the commission form of government. No? Interesting.
That was the point of my question. I didn't think it was.
I thought it was.
I don't have
but-
an attorney yet.
And so that's why they got the goofy thing that just, if you are a city that elects your council at large, you still won't have that veto power. Why? Who knows?
Okay.
Makes no sense to me. Thanks for correcting that. Appreciate it. I don't like to give bad information.
any more plan commission questions? If not, let's move on to the general public. If you have a question, please come up, identify yourself, and keep to the point. So, anyone? Before Mark starts, I did get a couple of questions by hand here. And one is, what are the qualifications for a city manager? Well, those are put together in the job description. So if it passes, a job description is made up, and all those qualifications would be part of that job description. If the council and mayor do not agree on the hiring of choice of a city manager, who steps in to assume the role?
If there's a vacancy or they haven't got an agreement on the individual, they would appoint somebody from, on a temporary basis to do so. That's, the council would have to agree. You'd have to get 3 votes.
Mark Dutlinger. My question is, if we did go to a city manager form of government and the commission decides that they would like to let that manager go for whatever reason, does that manager who's been fired have legal recourse? Can they turn around and sue the city for any reason in particular? If they feel like maybe they just didn't agree, or they felt they were let go for not the right reasons or any reason or whatever? That's sort of a naive question. Maybe Pat could answer that too, but
Well,
I thought I'd
think,
bring it up here.
No, that's a good question. Any employee who might not believe they were let go for a good reason would have the ability to file complaints with either state or federal agencies, saying there was some discrimination taking place, or go into court to say that it was inappropriate. It could be a 1983 cause of action, saying that the city either violated its own policies or violated state or federal law in the dismissal. So there's always that opportunity to sue. Doesn't mean that you are going to lose. Lawyers like to take 1983 causes of action on behalf of people, because if they are successful, even if they don't get much for their client, they get their attorney's fees paid for.
So if it's another question on that, in the meantime, say that fired city manager does sue the city in recourse, would the council then have to decide for an interim to fill in, or would that just be a, how can I say it, in limbo, in other words?
No, if normally what would happen is you'd go ahead and hire your next city manager, right? And be ready to just proceed along with city business and let that lawsuit take its time going through the process. Normally, you would have insurance that provides at least a defense, depending on what the city's insurance policies provide. You may or may not have coverage for the action being brought. And so, often if we can do so on the way out the door, we work out some kind of agreement where we have them waive any ability to sue, but it usually costs some money to do that. In Illinois, we used to have, in a lot of manager contracts, up to 6 months of pay if they weren't retained at the next election. Now the maximum severance is 20 weeks of pay under Illinois law. I've used that quite a bit to say, no, we can't do that, because I represent the management side, not the employee side of things. And, but we can do some kind of severance pay and a waiver of any claims, just to make sure that we don't have that issue. Sometimes that's the best use of your money, as opposed to paying a lawyer to defend you.
So in other words, I guess another way would be to make sure that the council documents everything properly.
I do
And not sort
employment
of
law,
let
a
things
lot of
slide
it.
a little bit. so.
And not to offend too many people in the room that are firefighters, but firefighters are terrible at disciplining members of the fire department. Police department does a much better job. Other governmental employee representatives don't do such a hot job. Because especially in a small environment like this, it's a friendly workplace, generally speaking. We don't like to write up our friends, but boy, if you don't document when somebody isn't doing what they're supposed to do, you can really be hurt when you ask your lawyer to defend your actions. Carl, this person has been a jerk for 20 years. We need to get rid of him. Finally, I'm going to get rid of this individual. Fire him. Okay, let me see the evaluations. And that person has been a stellar employee for 20 years instead of the jerk that I'm hearing about, right? So be careful what you write in your evaluations. Be honest in them. And I know this is off. I don't care what form of government you have with that. Make sure you do a good job as managers in managing your employees. Employees will appreciate it. If you enforce the rules, let them know what the rules are, and you enforce them equally, you'll have a much better workforce.
Thank you.
Greg Stein. I'm confused at all the choices of governments that exist. We have council form with weak mayor, and there's a possible council form with strong mayor. There's managerial that we might be voting on, and there's administrator that we might be voting on. And then there's aldermanic, like Peru has, that they're in charge of each of their districts, which you recommended not for a town our size. Am I missing any?
The villages. And the village form of government, you have a village president and board of trustees, and they're all elected at large. Unless by referendum, you go and have districts for them. And you can have cities that typically have wards that by referendum you can go to, everybody's at large, or some are at large and some are by wards. So we've got this mess of opportunity in the state of Illinois on how to do it. Now, you said that you might be doing a referendum on 2 different forms of administrator and manager. There's only one question, and that's whether you're going to the managerial form of government. The city council on its own, say that doesn't pass, could hire an administrator. And then by ordinance, you set out the authority, but you still aren't taking away from the council or the mayor the appointing authority for officers and department heads.
How do you get to the form of government where the mayor has veto powers?
You could do a referendum to go to that one of the other forms of government, either city or village, where if it's a city form of government, you have aldermen elected by wards, unless by referendum you say we want to go to that at-large group.
My name is Dan Fitzgerald. I just want to confirm, you mentioned that in this form, in the council manager form of government, council members do not have responsibility for a specific department.
If you go to the managerial form of government, if the referendum passes, that would be correct. The manager would be over the department, not the commissioners.
Who negotiates contracts, specifically labor contracts, and who handles human resource issues?
Generally speaking, the manager does, subject to direction from the council with respect to the economics.
Okay.
In Orland Park, I do some of their labor work, and while I do go to the village board in that situation for authority on the economics, the manager and the department head that I'm working with direct how we negotiate.
The manager of the department and the city manager.
Yeah.
Okay. You also mentioned that we have to wait 4 years to abandon the managerial form of government, but not to abandon the city manager. If the manager, for example, during the first couple of years of this, the city council chooses there is cause to dismiss the city manager, they don't have to wait 4 years for that.
No.
The city manager can be changed.
Yeah,
but
the
the form
manager
of
can
government
be
cannot
changed as often as the council believes appropriate.
Okay, so they can discharge that person with cause at time. So would you describe this form of government as comparable to a board of directors, where the council is a board of directors, city manager is a CEO? Is it comparable to like a school board or a non-for-profit organization where there's a board and a CEO?
Don't get me started on school boards.
Sorry.
A long time ago, I chose to focus more on the municipal and the labor and let others deal with the school boards. I won't say why, but there's darn good reasons. My filter sometimes works and it gives me migraines, so I'm sorry.
I'm ready for this answer.
What was your question? The manager could be viewed as that CEO. Typically, you would have the mayor viewed as the figurehead, and now it's more of a ceremonial position, who is just a voting member of the city council, votes on everything. But the manager has the power that the mayor has in most places. And the manager has the power that the commissioners currently have with respect to the individual departments. So president, CEO reports to the board of directors, but with respect to running the place, has a lot of autonomy. But 3 people can decide, we don't like the direction you are taking the city, and we want to, get somebody else in here to do it.
The council is a policy ordinance setting body,
Correct.
planning, that kind of thing. And the city manager implements that policy.
Correct.
Okay. The council, and I'm sorry, one last question here. The council council members, is it optional for how they are elected? Can they be, in the manager form of government, can they be elected at large or by ward?
Yes.
Okay, so is that part of this referendum? Do we know how that's going to turn out? Are we seeking
believe
a
the
managerial
referendum
form of
is-
government where they're going to be elected at large, or?
No, it's my understanding the referendum is just on the question of whether to go to the manager form of government. And if it passes, you're still electing the council at large.
Okay, so that's another referendum, I think.
It would be another referendum
I
to
think-
go to a ward system, and you would then have to, based upon population, work out the ward map to be relatively equal number of voters in each.
Okay. I said one last question. I guess I lied here. I just thought of something. So we did check on, Ken mentioned that he had talked, a community 15 miles to the east of us here. chose not to do a city manager, but we did have a community 50 miles to the west of us that does have a city manager, comparable size, that a little smaller, but did choose to go to a city manager. Did we check with them as to why they did choose a city manager?
It's my understanding that Princeton had the commissioner form of government. But in checking their charter, they indeed had, and you can correct me, Pat, if I'm wrong with this, they indeed did have the city manager form of government to begin with. They were just not doing it.
So they did not
so-
switch they switched to it because,
When somebody went through the ordinances and found out that they had a city manager form of government, then they adopted that, they went to what they were supposed to be doing.
are they happy with it?
That's what I understand. Now, I don't know if anybody has any other information other than that. But Princeton is a city manager form of government.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Hi. I have just one question. I'm pretty familiar, I feel at least, with the city manager form of government and principle, but I'm more curious about it in practice. And I assume I can kind of maybe predict what the answer is going to be, that maybe it's a mixed bag. But in your experience with the city manager form of government, how often do councils kind of just defer to the city manager and kind of let them take all the city manager's recommendations and kind of run with them? Or is it kind of just I'd assume it's kind of a mixed bag, but it just depends on the people you have in there, right?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, and my advice to every member of every governmental unit that I have, whether they're elected or appointed, your number one job is to ask questions. And if you're just taking the recommendation of a manager, of the mayor, of one of the commissioners now, if somebody says, yeah, this is a good idea, and everybody just says, okay, do it, without asking questions and making sure it is right for the community, you're not doing your job. And what I've seen often is you've got a majority on a board working most closely with the professional administrator or manager, whether it's administrative form of government or the managerial form of government. Then, I'm sorry, I keep taking my back just to you here because the questioners are going to here. That's not very polite. So often you get the individual focusing on the 3 votes that keeps that person in the position. And that's not good. Everybody needs to be asking questions. I don't like individuals that are on boards that just are obstructionists and they're fighting everything. And if they're way off in left field, fine. Let them be off in left field or right field. Either way. But the vast majority of the time, if somebody says, wait a minute, I have a question, what about da-da-da-da-da? It makes the other members of the board think. And the other members of the council should think, is this the right way to go? And if it is, you vote yes in your mind. I don't see people that get elected trying to do things that they think are bad for the community. In their minds, they're doing what is right, even though there might be somebody polar opposite point of view on that board. Polar opposites can sometimes work well together because it forces you to the middle, which is where most of us are anyway. So is it a yes, ma'am, yes, sir, all the time? I hope not.
Austin,
Can it be? Yeah.
mention your name for the video this time.
Oh, Austin Cullinan. Yes.
Mark Ambrose. You had mentioned that the city manager would have hiring and dismissal rights for the department heads.
Yes, sir.
What about the department heads that are union? We have union department heads in the city here. Would that affect them? And who would be hiring the employees below them?
Generally speaking, in a community this size, it would be the manager and probably the department head together making those hiring decisions. I don't believe you have a human resources department that's equipped to be doing that. You kind of do it on your own, right? And so that would probably be a joint operation. But a union individual, you have to make sure you comply with the union contract. I don't know which positions are in that situation, though.
We have several, well, we have like the street department, the electric department, park department. I mean, they're heads of the department
Okay?
and they're in the union. So, I mean,
Who thought that was a good idea?
well, we have a commissioner that oversees them then. That does
understand.
it.
That might be something that I've noted in a collective bargaining agreement or two that I'm reviewing right now for the city of Oglesby.
Okay,
You gotta follow the contract, you gotta follow our policies.
all right.
But the manager would be over that individual.
Hi, I'm Scott Stavrakis. My question is going to be more to you, having looked at this type of government compared to what we have. How important is it, the education that the city manager will have gone through and the training they would have and the networks they have to the city, both now and going forward? And specifically, you just mentioned that we don't have human resources. A city manager would be trained in human resources. A city manager would be trained in how to run a street department. They'd be trained in how to run an electrical department.
Maybe.
Through they're very they've gone through a 2 to 4 year program to get a graduate degree to run, and that's what they learn, is how to run a city.
They get more of a management degree.
Right.
An administration degree. They don't get how to run a public works department, how to run an electrical department. Just like lawyers don't get taught how to run a law firm.
But they have a network that they can turn to because it's a very tight network.
They have a network, depending on their level of experience, that might be a good or a bad network. And so we hope you get somebody in. If you go to this direction, it would be best to get an experienced individual to start with. That might be difficult to find with the compensation that you'll probably be advertising. And now, thanks to the Illinois General Assembly, all employers, when you post a notice for a job, you must include the salary range and the benefits. As of January 1 of 2025, you also add in the benefits. You can say they're over here on a website, but you got to include that in any job posting that you do.
Yeah. And I was going to throw this out there in that I know the city of Ottawa, you said no city's ever gone back from this form of
I
government.
don't know of one.
That you know of, okay. I know the city of Ottawa did not do it because they said they were worried the people would be passing through. In part of my role recently in this area of interviewing people for municipal type positions, I know of 2 people that have local ties that live here that just they can't move to another areas and they're looking for this type of position. So there are people out there who would love to have this type of position. They've gone through the training and live in the area. So it's not as hard as I think we would think it would be.
Okay.
So.
By the way, there's a table in the back. If anybody wants to write a question, I'd be happy to bring them up, and you can remain anonymous. Jay?
Am I on? Sounds like it. Jay Baxter. There's been a lot of talk about how much this is going to cost and saving money. There was some discussion on setting a limit for the city manager. I would like you to, contrast that to what we do with the commissioners and what's typical, how much spending authorities, how much discretionary spending authority commissioners are typically given And what are the restraints and how does that typically work out?
Typically, you don't have individual authority to expend money. It's a council vote or a village board vote. But by policy and by ordinance, you can give authority to do so. And you can increase it or decrease it. And the same thing with the manager, you can do the same thing with the commissioners, right?
What is the typical limit on commissioners if they are given authority?
I don't know that it's typical. It's an atypical form of government to start with, as is the manager form from a statewide thing. Okay, it's just a fairly small number of.
How would 20,000 strike you?
That's basic, not a bad number. 25,000 is a very common number for managers to have, with department heads at 10 or 5.
In a city this size, is that typical, or? And I guess I'm going back to it because everybody's worried about the money, and the one thing that keeps getting said, the city manager is going to spend all our money. So we're sitting here in a situation where we can set it at whatever we want. But right now, we have 4 people with a $20,000 limit, is my understanding. So I guess I'm just trying to make a point.
And if that's what the council limits are for each commissioner, that's a policy decision. There's certain limits that you, once you hit, you have to engage in bidding. I don't know what your purchasing policy is with respect to getting quotes or below that requirement. And you have 3/5 majority vote to waive the competitive bidding for municipalities. Some other units of government don't have that authority, but municipalities do.
Okay. In all sincerity, I really thank you for coming down here because I think you've done a good job of explaining it and explaining it in such a way that everyone can understand it. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Are there any questions on that table back there? None, okay.
I know for most cities, change doesn't come easy.
Flip it on.
I'm sorry. I know for most cities, change doesn't come easy. One of the philosophies I live by is on the other side of fear is freedom. So those of you who are mostly fearful, what if this happens, what if that happens, what if that happens? I would suggest you to flip it and to possibly ask yourself, what would the best outcome possibly look like? And then when you head in April, I think you'll feel like you have a balanced perspective on the situation, and that may be helpful.
Please, what is your question?
My question is, the city manager will bring a expertise to the process, just like the attorney does at the city council meetings. You want that legal expertise. A city manager will bring the expertise that you just mentioned of management and administrative expertise to the city. And that degree and that skill level that they've invested in is something that could benefit a city like this. Is that not true, sir?
I would say that is true, but do you need to go to a managerial form of government to get that level of expertise and then put the authority into the manager's hands that currently is not in that administrative level hand? And that's why the most popular thing is in Illinois is an administrator who is an appointed position by the council or by the village board for the professional administration, but doesn't have the appointing authority that they do in the managerial form of government. So there's 2 different ways of going about it. You know, if you think it's a good idea to have a village manager, you don't have to have it as part of a referendum that changes your form of government so significantly. So I work with village administrators, city managers all the time. And so I'm used to that level, that professionalism, and it can be a very good thing. And the question for the community is, are we as a community at the position that we want to have that professional administration? And if we do we want it in a managerial form of government, or do we want it in the city government with an appointed administrator? Those are your options.
With that professional expectation, though, would come a good faith expectation out of this employee for the city, correct? That they would operate in good faith.
I would hope so.
I think one of the current issues that people have with the current form of government is not everybody who has been given a seat at the table consistently operates in good faith. So this would change that because you would be bringing in professional skill, education, expectation. I have made a request to speak to one of the commissioners several times by email and have never been given the courtesy of a reply. That's not good faith. I understand that the appointment of the new commissioner was done kind of backhanded. That's not good faith.
Please, would you reserve those comments for the comment section? If you have
I
a
didn't
question-
realize it. I mean, if there's a comment section, I'm more than happy to
There's a
read.
comment section after.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't understand. I thought you had gone to that, so forgive me.
I didn't catch your name either.
I'm Mark Schmont.
All right, any other questions?
Hi, I'm Krista Pagakis. You talked earlier about the council not being happy with the city manager 3 can remove. But what if the public isn't happy with the city manager and the performance? What is the process to replace them due to bad performance? And the approximate timeline and additional expenses that could be accrued?
The public would have the ability to come to city council meetings, write letters to the mayor and the alderperson saying, this individual is not doing the job that we want him to be doing, you should replace that individual. It's, public pressure, political pressure. It's voting at the next election for new council members, new mayor, if that's what you think it's going to take to get rid of the city manager. But you can't do it by the public coming in and doing it. Illinois does not have recall of elected officials, so you wouldn't be able to do that in the middle of a term. You have to wait for the term to get over. And then it's a political process. And the managerial form of government, in my area of the state, where you will get law firms supporting individuals to get on boards who will then appoint a manager who will then appoint them as village attorney or city attorney. You also get the same thing, getting mayors elected, so the mayor will appoint the law firm. So the politics at play change from, if you have a mayor appointment versus a manager appointment. You'll see different players working to get individuals elected so that they have a better shot at becoming village engineer, village attorney, city attorney, whatever it might be.
Thank you.
City administrator.
Who would be the interim city manager when the city manager has days off, extended absence, or if they're fired or quit?
The vacancy, I believe the statute provides that the council would appoint somebody in the vacant position as an acting person. Usually it would probably be one of the department heads. If it's an extended absence, you could bring in somebody on a temporary basis outside the current workforce.
And one more question. Is it true that if a city manager is sued, that it is the city's liability and expense?
Generally. Same thing if any of the city employees are sued for something that they did in their position as an employee. It has to rise out of in the course of employment. It can't be something that I did on a personal basis, but something I did. I caused an accident, I caused injury while driving a vehicle. I took improper employment actions against a subordinate, those types of things. I could get sued personally, but the city is there to, as the real deep pocket, and their insurance policy is behind that as well. So yeah, there's an indemnification requirement under the statute for employees getting sued and causing injury. There are protections that local governments have that we don't have, generally speaking, as individuals, to avoid some of the damages. But our employees are the ones that cause most of the liability back to the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rose Torres. I just have a question, a clarification. We're voting whether or not to have a managerial government, period.
Correct.
But I thought I had this straight until you were talking.
Sorry, I hope I don't confuse everybody.
You also said, though, there's two basic types of managerial. So once, if we vote yes, who gets to decide which type?
If you vote yes, you have the managerial form of government with the manager having the statutory powers of appointment and authority over the departments. If you vote no, the city council still has the ability to hire an administrator. It's probably easier to say administrator versus managerial form of government. But a lot of village managers or city managers are really administrators, and so it gets confusing. Just like village presidents are called mayors, by statute they can be called a mayor even though their official title is village president. We interchange the title of manager and administrator inappropriately, but here what you're talking about is going whether to go to a manager form of government.
And if we vote no and they decide to go with the administrator, how exactly does that differ from a mayor?
It is significantly different in the power of the village administrator, city administrator versus the manager. By statute, the manager has that authority to appoint village attorney, village engineer, all the appointed offices, department heads. Depending on what the city council does in granting authority to the city administrator would limit that power. But it would not be the authority to appoint the department heads, appoint the village attorney, appoint the village engineer. Those things would be left in the council.
So it's still really don't know. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry to confuse. Ask another question. I'll try to clarify. That's fine.
John Shapiro. I guess a couple of questions and points. Right now, the form of government we have, with the commissioners, those positions, I'm not 100% certain of this. Are they paid positions? They're not, right?
$300 a month.
$300 a month? Okay. So everyone still has a full-time job. This is still just something that you do out of the kindness of your heart. It's not because you're getting paid money to do this. I mean, the mayor, I probably think gets paid a little bit more than the commissioners, I would assume, right? Correct?
$1,000.
$1,000 a month. Okay, still, it's not the $12,000 a year. You're not living on $12,000 a year. It's. So my question is, we're trying to do what's best for the city moving forward in hiring this new position, which could be $120,000. You're gonna have somebody who's gonna be fully dedicated and a lot more time to have allocations to do with their time to push forward economic development, to bring things in here maybe that couldn't have been done before, or maybe that have slipped through the cracks from grants, etc. These are all things that a city manager should have knowledge in.
That is one of the advantages of having a manager or administrator. They have, that is their dedicated position. They're there full time, putting in that effort on behalf of the city.
Okay. So regardless, that's a leg up for the city manager over the administrator person. Okay, good.
Leg up?
Well, you're saying that that's their career. They would have more background in that. Is what you're saying?
Whether it's a manager or administrator, they got the same education.
Okay.
Okay? The difference is in the type of government and the authority by statute versus authority by ordinance by the city council.
All right. Next question, regardless of whether it be administrator or a city manager, if the council butts heads and still can't put together things in the right direction to agree on something, like even hiring a city manager, whoever has that position is still going to be hamstrung by the council, correct?
If you have a board that can't work or doesn't work well together, you still have those issues that are created, whatever form of government you have.
Exactly.
And that can interfere with the smooth operations.
Right.
Butting heads isn't always a bad thing.
No, I agree.
But at the same time, everybody ought to be working on the benefit of the community, right? That was the best way to go about it.
And then I guess my last question here, if it does pass coming up, and then the city council has to then vote on who they're going to pick, who they're going to hire for this position. In the meantime, until that happens, will government continue to operate the way it is right now?
Correct. And by the statute, it stays in play until the next election at which the council and mayor are up, which would be in 2027, unless the city council elects before then to change the ordinance, reorganize, and hire a manager.
All right, thanks.
Zach Quadick, just real quick to that last point. I see some department heads in here tonight, and I'm just curious. Any of you guys work anywhere other than Oglesby? I didn't think so.
Yeah, department head, that kind of job. Not commissioner.
Brandy Day. Few quick questions here really quick. One, to clarify, this is a single vote matter. We vote yes or no on if we want to adopt a city manager. There is no second part to this unless citizens chose to then approach the council, create an ordinance to put this city manager in place. This is simply the yes or no vote on if we as a town want to proceed with a change in form of government.
Correct.
Okay. Also, I'm hearing this power of three. So if three majority votes pretty much decide where the direction is going to go, if people are worried about the same 3 votes being cast at a commissioner level, that will not change at the city manager level, right? It is just
Still the same?
same 3 majority.
Correct.
The problem is not eliminated if your concern is that 3. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
at a 5-member board, 3 is the magic number.
And then can you possibly explain a little bit about perhaps what an economic developer might bring in comparison with a city manager? Anything to that?
Yeah, it's really a policy question on the commissioners on how best to spend their money and what produces the better results for those dollars spent. Economic development is it's a special qualification. It takes a lot, and it takes an area that people want to develop. And that's not an easy thing. You're not sitting right next to a highway going north, south, east, and west with a need for all the Amazon warehouses. And so it makes it more difficult to push for those kinds of developments. But economic development is something that all my municipal clients are talking about. And economic development directors that I've seen over the years are expensive, and some do a very good job, others do a terrible job. And I had one talking negatively about a business owner in the town to potential new developers coming in a restaurant with people from the chamber at the next table hearing this. That individual did not last much longer as the economic development director, and wasn't doing a good job for the community. So a manager can be economic development if they've got the background for it. The mayor can do it, council members can do it, public can do it. I don't know that I can weigh one versus the other. That's got to be a policy decision. Sorry.
Thank you.
As somebody who's in economic development, it depends on the area. It's not going to depend on.
I'm sorry, if you want to quit.
You want me to come up?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And while you're heading up, I have a couple of questions here. One, I think we've answered this one. It says if we vote on a city manager after he or she is hired, it'd take 4+ years for any changes. That's not true, right? It takes effect when the city manager is hired.
Correct.
Okay. And the second was, if you vote no, we can by ordinance appoint a city planner, no attorney fees and no ordinance charge changes. Well, I don't know if that's...
It might cost, if the city council wanted to establish economic development, city planner, administrator position, they have the authority to do so, and it's just a question of priorities in your budgeting and expenses. So they can do all of that. It's up to them.
I have one more real quick one here, and then I'll let you go. The question here is more of pretty much like almost a comment. What exactly do we expect from our choice of a city manager? And where exactly did it, well, I'll get into that. But what do we expect from a city manager? That's all laid out in the job description, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I guess in response to the last person, I've done a lot of work in the economic development area. I've got to ask the question of, the city manager would have some role in that, am I correct? As far as that'd be a point person that somebody looking to develop in the area would probably go to?
Yes. And if you have an economic development director, usually that individual is reporting to the administrator or manager.
Right. And for an Oglesby, anybody coming to this area is looking at the area. Jay, you and I have been very involved in that. They're not looking at a particular town. They're looking at the workforce in a 50-mile radius. They're looking at the education, the age, the skill level of that workforce. And without that, it doesn't matter what you do with an economic development director. We hired one of the best in the state of Illinois and didn't get anywhere because of our age of our workforce and the education of our workforce. So.
Are there any other questions? Now's the time. Seeing none, the floor will be open for public comment, first by Plan Commission members. All right, hearing none, the floor is open for public comment from anybody in the audience.
Where's that man there? Didn't want to be first. Oh, boy.
I kind of feel like Lincoln saying, I can't add anything to what these two outstanding speakers have already said. I think of all how fast time is going to the vote. This has been extremely enlightening, I think, and very detailed. I appreciate the effort that the Planning Commission has put forth for this. because I was feeling I was the only one that was concerned. Because I was relying only on a January news clipping from the paper. And the last meeting I was at, or the one that was recorded in the newspaper, was so inclusive of the whole state. And we're a very tiny city in comparison to the statistics I found online of how many cities have city managers. I'm thinking AI is not so great because my numbers disagree, or maybe they're not updated. So I found online that we have 1,445 cities in Illinois, and only 77 of those cities have city managers. And yesterday I was told that I was wrong, but that's what was online. So I looked up the two that I was told yesterday should have been on my list, and they don't change my opinion of what I found when I examined the list, is that of the 77 on my list, only 2 are the size of Oglesby, under 4,000 population. And of those 2 cities, one, the median income is $350,000. That's not in our category. So they really need a city manager. I think they're very aggressive and they can afford one. The other city has started out as a population of 5,000, and over the recent 30 years, it has now only have 2,000 population. So they probably would like a city manager to see how they can grow. Then I found a place online where if you put a city name online, it'll show you the population in a graph, a line graph. And all of our neighbors and ourselves are on a very level population line. We're not going to go like this. And no kind of management is going to bring 4,000 people to our town so that we can afford more of anything. I really appreciate the fact that my knowledge and connection with anybody that works for the city is that they are very dedicated because this is your home. And your neighbors kind of give you feedback right away. So I was wondering why people or cities even get a city manager and what happens. So I'm Googling, and here comes a city that has a beautiful, it's the city of Sycamore has a city manager. So I said, well, let me Google it up and see. It's a rich city. So, or I don't know, I take that back. But when I Googled it up, they have a beautiful website, really evidently professionally made. And so I said, well, then I will take the time and Google or click on their board meeting, because shouldn't the city manager appear at a board meeting? And he doesn't come to that city's board meeting in January. In our town, in January, we had a report from one of our council members that was so outstanding that I expected something better from this website to show that the city manager is working. So in that city's manager's goal was, I wrote it down, kind of to be cheerful and cooperative, plus all of the normal things that we would expect him to do. But there he was, this kind of thing. So I'm saying, now I'm going to read rather than...
Pat, would you move it along?
Yes.
Please.
I knew you would. You could tell that I'm really questioning the necessity of a city manager. So Sycamore has a great webpage, as I said. I only skimmed their minutes, of one January meeting, but saw no indication that the city manager's was present, nor that the city manager even gave a report. So I wondered how on hands a city manager's administration really is. I've read elsewhere that a city manager would be at council meetings, so that's why I was shocked that it wasn't in the minutes anywhere. So the question still pertains: how do we pay the city manager an annual wage and not track the time and actions he puts forth day to day, month to month, benefiting the city? The intangible goals like compassion and teamwork are worthy, but a small city like Oglesby needs also to experience a commensurate financial benefit to warrant or balance the economic burden of hiring a city manager. What exactly do we expect from our choice of a city manager? And where exactly did the circulated referendum petitioners see the need? Someone of them should speak up, and I thought we would see him. All we know is an unheralded circulation of the referendum petition was filed by a small percent of our citizens and legally received ballot position as a proposition. Because there was little made public information before February 17th, we have now allocated $7,000 to the Planning Commission so that they can play catch-up for the electorate, us, regarding this decisive proposition. Why wasn't there more information and public discussion before this issue became a proposal and being placed on the ballot? It seems to me it was thus that this initiative could change our city government and raise taxes like a Trojan horse. Do I say Trojan horse? And very likely escape real scrutiny. Well, they haven't, because we're here, we're looking at them. I fear because a yes vote and its immediate effect is still poorly understood. So I'm not really good at math, but say the income, the annual salary of a city manager is $150,000. We have 3,000, rounded off 3,000 households. Into $150,000 is $50 each a year. And I don't know how you translate that to a percent on your real estate tax bill, but it will show up. So this is how I will conclude. I'm in green. I'm not Irish, but I'm Pat from home. I'm Pat Oshiersky. So here's the last thing I'll say is a little parody on an Irish pub song. And as you go home election day, as dumb can be, later find a tax bill rating for your city manager fee. Don't call the council to ask how this was done. Their only answer will be, they will give April Fool the proposal one.
Thank you, Pat. Any other public comments? Please, let's try to keep it, as condensed as we can.
Hopefully I'm not the only one who thinks that lady should do a video for the city of Oglesby that's used on your website and on your social media, because you'll start bringing in the tourist dollars that I think the city is missing out on. You're a couple miles away from one of the biggest tourist attractions in the state. And this city is not grabbing that opportunity to the fullest potential. I'll give you a little math as well. If you pay the city manager $130,000, that's 1% of your annual budget. 1%. I'll also remind you guys about the other side of fear is freedom and what best practice looks like, because you have to have a expectation of the people that are running your city. And if there are less than 4,000 people here, there are 4,000 people that any day of the year could choose to sue the city, choose to sue the council, choose to sue a nonprofit. That is part of life. So I'm not going to spend my life worrying about who might sue me when or where. And I suggest that you probably try to let that go as well, because it can happen. And then my last comment is going to be about the good faith and expectations. The city has a right to expect that the people who are running your city behave in best practice and good faith behavior. And if what I heard about last night's appointment, where the financial expert was not chosen for the Finance and Accounts Commissioner, that was all done ahead of time by possibly a bully alliance, which is what I have a problem with this current. That's my opinion. It's just my opinion,
We're
sir.
not getting into personalities.
No. I didn't mention anybody.
And I think we have to
Somebody
stay
else
with-
said that there was a three-person decision-making process. I have identified them as a different adjective, a bully alliance. Now you have two new commissioners, and you may have a city manager,
I'm
and
gonna
why
ask-
not have better
I'm going to ask
expectations
you
of them, sir?
to stay with the subject.
The
which
subject
the
is
manager.
city
Shall
government.
we adopt a city manager form of government?
And would not, let me ask you this question, would it then not be appropriate to weigh the current process against a potential future process, sir? Yes or no?
I don't know the answer to that.
I think the answer is yes. So if you can't scrutinize how things are operating now, then you can't prepare for what could happen in the future. I think you need more highly educated people. You need best practice. You need professionalism that isn't always present in some of the members, not all of them, of the current leadership that have been elected. And I also like the idea of whatever way where you can scatter the elections for at least two of the councilors. But a councilor position that is now going to be 26 months should not be decided by other commissioners in a private meeting. And if that's what happened, that's really unfortunate.
I have to stop you here because you're off the topic. The topic is on whether or not we should adopt a city manager form of government. This is not an open forum about anything except that. So if
Okay,
you
sir,
wanna
I'm
stay
just
on-
comparing it to the current government.
If you want to stay on the current, should we adopt?
Okay.
a city
Then I'll
manager-
just point out that you do use an attorney at all of your city council meetings because that expertise is appreciated and necessary. And I think perhaps having somebody who has management and administrative degree expertise will also help move this city in a direction where you can capture some of the tourist dollars that so far I don't see coming into the city. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. More comments? It's open now. If you want to make your comments.
Hi, I'm Carrie Lieski. I was a former commissioner here in Oglesby, and I can tell you it was a wonderful experience. But as you know, we're elected at large, and there are no qualifications really that we live in Oglesby for us to run and get enough ballots or get enough people signed and enough people to vote for you. We are not there because we have education and expertise and finesse in finance or human resources or any of that. And then once we get elected to be commissioner, then the mayor assigns us the departments that we're in charge of. So if I was thrown into the electrical, I would have had no clue on how to best help the electrical department to be safe, to grow, to improve. So I guess what I'm looking at is while you're at large, it's still a good way to elect commissioners. It would be so helpful to have that expertise to look to and have them spend more time with the commissioners planning and setting goals and having someone else, the manager, to actually implement what we believe in. So that's all I have to say.
And thank you. Good point. Next. Mr. Mayor?
Hi, Jason Kern here. I just want to tack on a little bit to what Commissioner Lewinsky said, but first, I wanted to say something that you're probably not going to expect that I'm going to say. I wanted to talk about something that I think was mentioned at the last informational meeting and what I think people were expecting here, and that's some of the pros of commission form of government. Now, I know we talked about it in a lot of detail, but I don't think anybody's ever really summarized that before. So, to be fair, I want to say that there's two main things that I think that is unique with the commission form of government that is a true strength. The first one is it is the absolute cheapest form of executive management that you can have. But if we're talking about price and value, that is true. That's one right there. We have 14.8 million. If you go to the Illinois Comptroller's website, that's our revenue gain that we had for 2024. So this thing seems really loud. Wow. Okay, sorry. So with that, we only have $2,200 a month that we spend basically on our executive leadership throughout the city. That's it, right? That is better than you're going to be able to get in any other kind of form of management. That's the first thing. The second thing is the speed and availability of being able to fix your resources. This was kind of mentioned at the last informational meeting. Your commissioner, if you have a good commissioner that's really informed of what's going on and you want to reach out to him, because we are a small community, you can grab that commissioner, and if he has the authority to fix that problem, he can fix it quicker than any other form of government we have. That is a value. Those are the two values of a commission form of government. However, that, in my opinion, is where the value stops. Because, as Commissioner Lewinsky said, it's the same thing. When I got in as commissioner, I was in charge of electric, water, sewer, and I was selected for those positions because I was probably the closest one that had backgrounds in those things. That didn't make me an expert. I took a lot of time, a lot of effort to try to learn how to do those things and do the best of my ability, right? Not everybody has that time, right? So that's one of the big concerns I have with that. And that's one of the things I think that city manager form of government, especially in a city of our size, has a huge advantage of. So I just want to be fair and tell those are the two advantages of commission form that I don't think I heard anybody ever summarize before. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Jason. Next.
Greg Stein again. To the guy's question or comments over here and our speakers tonight, the gang that can exist at a level of 3, I kind of think that this, I'm changing my mind that this managerial form wasn't the direction we should have been going for. So I'm a little disappointed at the answers I got. I was really kind of hoping that we'd get more to a strong mayor veto power form of government, but it doesn't seem like we're going to be there. And that's pretty much it. If there is a coalition and a gang in the council at level 3, we're going to be in the same position and spending another $150,000+ a year. Oops, sorry.
Thanks, Greg. Next.
I'm Becky Kleinert. As a resident of Oglesby, I've given a lot of thought to the question about whether we should change our form of government, and I have decided to vote no. I won't be voting no because I don't believe that the city shouldn't look at possibly bringing in some sort of professional management to help. I do believe that that idea has some merit. I'll be voting no because I believe that something as important as changing the form of government should be properly vetted by all parties involved. I believe that as a taxpayer, I should have a full understanding of the costs and a detailed roadmap on how we're going to get there. If you paid any attention at all to the current council meetings, you know that this initiative was started because of lack of leadership and a power struggle between the commissioners and mayor. The persons pushing for this referendum are counting on the majority of voters to react to the current personalities at City Hall rather than be fully informed and to what the change means for the city and to you. As an issue this important should have been fully explored and discussed over a matter of many months or even a year or more before being put on the ballot. There's been a lot of discussion about costs, but yet taxpayers have been provided nothing more than the results of internet searches and estimates. Truth is, we won't know really what the cost of a city manager is until the position's been advertised and filled. But let's talk about some of those other costs. My guess is that once we do pass this, if it does pass, that we're going to need some sort of consultant to come into the city and tell us how to transform from the commissioner to the manager form. Don't be surprised if this consultant doesn't come from one of the organizations represented by the speakers at the last forum. Unlike last meeting's sales pitch, it won't be free. How much? We don't know. Much of our city code will be revised, and I appreciate that other people thought about this. Just how much will we pay in attorney fees and codification fees that we'll have? We don't know. We don't know. Will this person need an administrative assistant? One would assume that a person managing 5 departments, serving as the city's economic developer, HR department, budget department, and all of the other tasks that this person is going to come in and do is going to need some help. What will this cost? We don't know. Lastly, there's much speculation on how adding this position will impact taxpayers. I won't even pretend to know what the changes a city manager will make, but I can tell you that I fear that the changes will involve the very things that make Oglesby a great place to live. We have a police force that keeps us safe. We have many well-maintained parks and ball fields, a municipal swimming pool, and family-friendly events throughout the year. We have an ambulance service that we call our own. Will that be true in 2 years if this happens? City services that we all take advantage, like leaf bag and branch chipping, the fact that our streets are plowed before many are in other municipalities. And then, as what Mayor Kern pointed out, the ability to reach out to an elected official or employee and get your concern addressed in a timely manner. All of these items will be affected in some way, whether services are reduced or eliminated, all in the name of saving a buck and justifying the position of city manager. In closing, I ask you to vote no on changing the form of government. Not because I'm against looking at a way to improve how we do business, but because I believe we need to know the cost. We need to know the impact on the services to residents, and we need to understand what that transition process will look like. And I'll also add this. If you are truly unhappy with the current situation at City Hall, you have the power to change that in 2 years. And it's not going to cost you a dime. Use this time to find and encourage good leaders in our community to step in and make a difference. A change like this should unite our town, not divide it.
Thanks, Becky. Any other comments? Well, we're keeping it right under 2 hours, so thank you very much. So thank our speaker this evening. He did a wonderful job. And thank you all for your input. You know, it pays to be an informed voter. Whether you're voting yes or no on this topic and this issue, please be informed and be respectful and you know, look deeply into why the change needs to be made or doesn't need to be made. So at this point, our planning commission will meet again and decide whether or not another public forum is warranted. If it is, we'll let you know. It'll be before April 1st. And there will be ample opportunity for anybody to express their opinions. So thank you very much for being here this evening, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Vinegar, seconded by Angie. All those in favor? Aye. The rest of you can stay. Thank you very much, and good night. Be careful out there.